Imagine a professional race car driver, right? They're getting ready for this massive championship event.
Right. The biggest race of their career.
Exactly. And they spend months studying the track. They memorize every single turn. They know exactly how the car handles. But then on race day, they sit in the cockpit and they completely forget to adjust their seat or, their mirrors.
Oh, yeah. Which is a disaster.
It's a total disaster because it absolutely does not matter how powerful that engine is. If you can't reach the pedals and if you can't actually see the track around you, you're going to crash before you even hit the first corner.
That is just such a perfect way to describe it. And sadly, it's exactly what we see happening with so many highly qualified candidates taking these automated interviews today.
Yeah.
People will spend weeks, literally weeks, rehearsing their technical answers. They polish their resumes until they shine, but they completely ignore the basic physical mechanics of the environment they're stepping into. They forget to adjust their mirrors.
So true. So today, we are cutting straight into the reality of the Micro1 AI interview. We're looking at the official platform guidelines, plus a ton of actual candidate reports to figure out what actually works.
Yeah, and we should clarify our mission for this discussion right up front. We are not here to talk about the theoretical future of artificial intelligence or how to reverse engineer some complex grading system.
No theory today.
Exactly. We wanted to give you actionable, tested strategies so that your true skills are accurately represented, because you really cannot outsmart this system. It adapts to you. So the absolute best way to pass is by focusing on your communication skills, keeping your logic clear, and, well, setting up your physical space correctly.
Which brings us right back to the race car, right? Before you can impress anyone with your industry knowledge, you have to actually get into the virtual room and stay there without your computer crashing.
Yeah, technical friction it's wild how common it is. It's a huge reason people fail before they even get to the first real question.
I mean, if your microphone cuts out, your brilliant answer to a coding problem just doesn't matter.
It really doesn't. And the platform has very strict hardware requirements. First off, you absolutely must use a standard desktop or laptop computer.
No tablets.
No tablets. The candidate data is super clear on this. People who try to take this interview on a mobile phone or an iPad, they almost always run into immediate system stalls.
Because of the screen sharing.
Exactly. Yeah. The interface requires full screen sharing and continuous video recording at the same time. Tablets they struggle to handle that combination in a web browser, and the session tends to lock up right after the hardware check.
Okay, that makes total sense. Stick to a real computer. Let's talk about that room and the environment. Because the guidelines mention that the system requires full desktop screen sharing, and it actually tracks where you are looking during the interview. And I have to say, that feels a little extreme to me.
Freaks a lot of people out.
Yeah. Is the platform really monitoring eye contact, or are candidates just being overly paranoid? Because I know when I'm thinking really hard about a complex problem, I tend to look up at the ceiling.
It's definitely not paranoia. The proctoring system is very real. They genuinely use computer vision models to trace your eye movements to ensure you're not cheating. But, and this is a big but, you do not need to sit perfectly still like a statue.
Okay, good, because I can't do that.
Nobody can. You just need to treat it exactly like a traditional in-person interview, sitting across from a real human in an office.
So looking up briefly to think is fine, but staring off screen for 2 full minutes is bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're with a human recruiter, it's totally normal to look away for a second to gather your thoughts. But if you constantly look down at your desk, or if your eyes are darting over to read something on a hidden secondary monitor...
A human recruiter would instantly think you're reading from a script.
Precisely. And the automated system thinks the exact same thing. It will flag your session.
Yeah.
So just stay focused on the active window, look near the webcam, and absolutely do not try to use any external AI assistance to feed you answers. It will catch you.
That is great practical advice. Okay, so our technical foundation is locked down. But the moment you actually start speaking, you face a completely different kind of challenge. Because talking to this adaptive system is not like talking to a human recruiter who just reads a list of questions off a clipboard, right?
It is incredibly different. And this is the most important concept for candidates to grasp. The automated interviewer does not use a static, pre-written list of questions. It actively listens to the exact words you choose to use. And then it generates dynamic follow-up questions based entirely on your specific responses.
Which brings us to this massive trap that catches so many candidates off guard. I mean, we see this constantly in the reports. It's what we call the buzzword trap.
Oh, the buzzword trap is so dangerous.
Explain how it works.
So If you casually drop a really complex technical term into your answer just to sound impressive, like, say you quickly mention Kubernetes or database sharding in passing, the system instantly pivots.
Because it assumes you brought it up on purpose.
Right. It assumes it's a core strength of yours, so it will hyper-focus on that keyword and intensely quiz you on the underlying architecture of that specific technology for the rest of the section.
Okay, but wait. I'm going to push back here. Isn't the whole point of an interview to flex your industry vocabulary? Like, if I know a fancy term and it's relevant to the job, shouldn't I use it to show that I'm keeping up with trends?
I get why people think that. But you have to treat this less like a casual networking event where you want to sound trendy, and more like a courtroom trial.
A courtroom trial.
Yeah. Anything you say can and will be used against you in cross-examination. If you bring up a concept, you must be fully prepared to defend it in deep technical detail. If you just mention a framework because you read a blog post about it once,
the system is going to ask you to deploy it.
Exactly. It'll ask you how to deploy it, how to scale it, how to troubleshoot it when it fails.
Wow. So the rule is basically keep it honest and verifiable. Only bring up skills that you truly master and feel comfortable discussing for like 5 minutes straight.
Precisely. And the system also calibrates the overall difficulty of the interview based on the skills you claim on your resume. So if you overstate your abilities and claim to be a senior expert in a programming language you only use once in college,
you're guaranteeing impossible questions.
literally guaranteeing it.
Yeah.
Honesty is genuinely the best preparation strategy here.
Okay, let's talk about another major difference in the conversation flow. Handling silence. Because with a human being, if you get a really tough question, you can just say, look thoughtful, and the human naturally waits for you to form your answer. What happens when you do that here?
That is a very frustrating experience for a lot of people. The system is programmed to keep the interview moving efficiently, so it often interprets long gaps of silence as an indication that you are finished speaking.
Oh no, so if I just sit there thinking...
The system might prematurely cut you off and move directly to the next question. It just assumes you had nothing left to say.
That sounds incredibly stressful. What is the workaround? Because if I get a complex scenario question, I genuinely need 10 seconds to structure my thoughts. I can't just start blurting things out.
The most practical tip reported by successful applicants is actually really simple. Ask the interviewer to repeat the question.
Wait, really? Just ask for a repeat?
Yeah. Do not just sit in silence. If you need time, calmly say, could you please repeat the second half of that question?
And it does.
Yes. The system has to process your request, generate the speech, and read it back to you. And that simple action legally buys you 10 to 15 seconds to gather your thoughts and outline your answer in your head. And it does it without the system assuming you're finished.
That is brilliant. It manages the system's expectations while giving you that mental breathing room. So, okay, once you actually have your thoughts together, how should you deliver the answer? Because since the system is listening so literally to every word, the way you structure your response seems to be the single most critical factor in passing.
Structure is absolutely everything here. First, you have to respect the time budgets.
Right, there are strict limits.
Very strict. When you're asked to provide your initial introduction, you usually only get about 60 to 90 seconds. You have to be concise. Behavioral questions give you about 2 to 3 minutes. Complex technical explanations might get 3 to 5 minutes.
And if you just keep talking...
If you ramble or go off topic, the conversational engine is literally programmed to gently interrupt you to keep things on track.
So for behavioral questions, the classic tell me about a time when questions, all the prep guides emphasize one specific framework, the STAR method.
Yes. Situation, task, action, and result.
Right. Why is that so important here?
Because the platform highly rewards structured communication. When you explicitly use the STAR method, you naturally organize your thoughts into a logical progression. You give the context, you explain your specific responsibility, you detail the steps you took, and then you provide a measurable outcome.
Which gives the AI exactly what it's looking for.
Exactly. Doing this actively boosts your scores in the categories that measure clarity and logical alignment.
But there's a massive trap here, especially for highly experienced professionals. The research calls it implicit thinking. Can you explain why being an expert can actually hurt you in this specific format?
Oh, this is a fascinating problem.
Yeah.
So highly experienced professionals, think like clinical healthcare workers or senior software developers, they often make decisions intuitively. They rely on years of accumulated experience.
Right, it's just muscle memory to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A doctor might look at a patient's chart and instantly know the correct diagnosis without having to verbally explain the 5 basic medical steps they took to get there. It's implicit. It happens silently in their brain.
Or like a senior project manager instantly knowing which framework to use for a new client simply because they've seen that exact same problem 20 times before.
Exactly. But the automated grading engine cannot read your mind. And it cannot grade your intuition. It only grades the actual words you speak out loud.
So if you skip the basics because they feel too obvious...
The system literally assumes you don't know them. You have to explicitly explain your step-by-step rationale out loud. You have to narrate your assumptions, explain your risk assessments, and detail your decision-making process.
I always compare this to taking a high school math test.
Right.
You know, getting the right final answer at the bottom of the page doesn't matter at all if you refuse to show your work.
Yes, showing your work is the perfect analogy. The system is essentially grading the scratch pad of your brain.
And for software engineers taking the coding portion, candidate reports note that the vast majority of the questions are actually middle-tier difficulty. They usually aren't asking insanely niche, impossible algorithm trivia. They just want to see if you can combine basic concepts. But crucially, you have to narrate the complexity trade-offs out loud while you type.
Exactly. And to truly understand what the system is listening for and how easy it is to make a mistake, I think it would be incredibly helpful if we actually demonstrate this. Let's run a quick simulated interview scenario right now so you can hear exactly how these strategies sound in action.
Oh, I love this idea. Let's do a short role play. I will play the role of the automated interviewer, and you play the candidate applying for a general technical project management role.
That sounds good.
I'm going to ask you a very common scenario question based on the reports. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's treat this like the real thing.
Okay, stepping into character. Hello. Can you tell me about a time you had to handle a project with very unclear instructions? How did you proceed?
Certainly. So in my last role as a project lead, a major enterprise client came to us requesting a complete overhaul of their internal data dashboard. However, their brief was incredibly vague. It essentially just said, make it faster and more modern. That was the situation. The task was to clearly define the actual scope of work before my engineering team wasted hours building the wrong product. So my first thought was that I needed to translate their subjective feelings into objective, measurable requirements. The action I took was to schedule a mandatory alignment workshop with their key stakeholders. I prepared a document with 3 distinct dashboard prototypes, ranging from a simple visual refresh to a deep architectural rebuild. I forced them to rank their priorities between speed, cost, and visual design. And, we actually spent a lot of time talking about their company culture during that meeting. The client's lead manager was a very interesting guy, very focused on aesthetics because of his background in graphic design. So we ended up discussing color theory for quite a while, which is nice. I think we spent about 30 minutes just looking at color palettes and talking about brand identity. But ultimately, we got a plan together.
And I'm going to cut you off right there. Because if this were the real interview, the system would have actually interrupted you 30 seconds ago when you started drifting into color theory and brand identity.
Exactly. That is the trap.
Let's break down exactly what just happened and why that answer was heading toward a failing grade, even though you started off so incredibly well. So what went right in the first half?
Well, I started strong by explicitly using the STAR method. Right. I clearly defined the situation, the vague client request, and I defined the task, which was defining the scope of work.
Yeah, that was super clear. And you also did a great job thinking out loud. You explicitly said, my first thought was that I needed to translate subjective feelings into objective requirements. You're really showing your work.
Right. And the system would score that portion very highly for proactive problem solving and clear logic. But then I completely lost the structure.
You really did. You drifted completely off topic at the end. You started rambling about the client's personality and graphic design and color theory.
Yeah, I completely forgot to clearly state the result of my action. I gave the situation, task, and action, but I left out the measurable result. I just wasted valuable time on irrelevant details, which is exactly why the conversational engine is programmed to interrupt.
And think about this. If we had continued, and I asked a follow-up question about the technical database you chose, and you casually mentioned a complex framework you didn't fully understand.
Boom. I would have triggered the buzzword trap right after rambling.
Exactly. The system is evaluating candidates for structured communication, clarity, and conciseness. When you started rambling about color palettes, it demonstrated poor time management and a lack of focus. A real candidate needs to finish that answer by saying something like, the result was a clearly defined scope of work that allowed our engineers to deliver the dashboard 2 weeks ahead of schedule.
Right. Concise, measurable, and structured.
It's a fantastic demonstration of how quickly an answer can derail if you just lose focus for a few seconds. So, let's move forward in our timeline. You lock down your environment. You avoid the buzzword trap. You structure your answers beautifully with the STAR method. You show your work, and you get a high score. You pass. You are officially Micro1 certified. Human intuition says it's time to pop champagne and celebrate your new job, right?
You think so, but the reality of this talent pool is actually a massive waiting game.
Which is a crucial part of managing expectations. When you read the candidate reports, this wait is a major source of anxiety.
Oh, absolutely. Passing the interview means you enter a vetted talent pool. Your verified skills, along with recordings of your communication style, are saved as a permanent badge on your profile. But you should absolutely not expect to start working the very next day.
Right, because many candidates log into their dashboards and just see a status that says hiring manager reviewing for weeks or sometimes even months. Getting certified does not mean immediate job placement.
Not at all. Placement depends entirely on external factors that literally have nothing to do with your interview performance. It depends on active client demand. It depends on the specific budget requirements of the client, whether your time zone aligns with their core team, and the final reviews conducted by the client's internal human managers.
So the automated vetting process is incredibly fast, but the actual hiring bottleneck has just shifted downstream to the human matching process.
Exactly.
It sounds incredibly frustrating for the applicant. I mean, it's almost like passing this rigorous, exhausting audition for a Broadway play, only to be told that you're just being put into a casting binder for a future show that hasn't even been written yet.
That is a brutally accurate comparison. Some candidates report doing dozens of interviews without landing a gig, simply because their general skills are super common. Meanwhile, other candidates get placed in 3 days because their specific niche technical skill happened to be in high demand that exact week.
So what's the strategy there?
The key takeaway is patience. Apply to roles that strictly match your true expertise to increase your matching odds. Understanding this business model up front prevents a lot of unnecessary burnout and anxiety.
Okay, let's wrap this session up by crystallizing everything we discussed into 3 practical takeaways that you can immediately use before your interview. Takeaway number 1, control your environment.
Do not let technical friction ruin your chances. Stick to a desktop or laptop computer. Secure a quiet room and use a wired audio setup to ensure the speech recognition system captures every single word you say without delay.
Takeaway number 2, beware the buzzword trap.
Remember the courtroom cross-examination rule. Only mention skills, frameworks, and industry terms that you could explain in deep technical detail. The system will dynamically follow up on exactly what you choose to say, so do not volunteer advanced vocabulary that you cannot confidently defend for 5 minutes straight.
And takeaway number 3, show your work.
Use the STAR method: situation, task, action, result, to structure your behavioral answers and keep yourself from rambling. Avoid the trap of implicit thinking. Narrate your thought process, your assumptions, and your trade-offs out loud to ensure the system captures the logic behind your decisions, not just your final answer. And hey, if you need a moment to think, smoothly ask the interviewer to repeat the question.
We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, from physical hardware setups to navigating these dynamic conversations and managing post-interview expectations. And while the interviewer on your screen might be an automated system, it is crucial to remember that the core skills being evaluated are beautifully human. Clear communication, strong logical reasoning, and genuine honesty about your experiences are what will ultimately get you certified.